In 2011, the Oakland Raiders acquired quarterback Carson Palmer after their current quarterback was lost to injury. He ended the season with 2,753 passing yards and an average of 8.4 yards per attempt. He played 10 out of the 16 games for the 2011 season. So how did he rank amongst the other quarterbacks in the league? And should Oakland be shopping for a new quarterback for the 2012 season? NFL.com provides a wealth of data, including the passing yards and the averages for all quarterbacks in the 2011 season. And if we look at this data more closely, we can see that the passing yards data and the average passing yards per attempt data are normally distributed. This means that we can use the standard normal distribution tables that are usually found in the back of the book to calculate Palmer's z-score and eventually his percentile and determine where did he rank amongst all of the different quarterbacks. So to assess Palmer's rank amongst his peers, we are going to find the percentile. But in order to do this, we need to take his score and standardize it, which in other words means find his z-score. So let's draw a picture to get an idea of where he falls among the distribution. As you can see here, his value of 2,753 falls below average, below the mean. It doesn't quite get to one standard deviation below the mean, but it's definitely below the mean. His average per attempt, however, falls above the mean. Again, not quite one standard deviation above the mean, but pretty close to one standard deviation above the mean, which is pretty good. So to get a little bit more specific about where he falls, let's actually calculate his z-score. And if you remember, we calculate z-score by taking the value, subtracting the mean, and then dividing that difference by the standard deviation. So his z-score for overall passing yards is negative 0.48. In other words, he's about half a standard deviation below the mean. His z-score for yards per attempt is approximately 0.78 in the positive direction. So that means he's about 3/4 of a standard deviation above the mean. The next thing that we do is we take a look at the standard normal distribution tables and determine what proportion of values fall below each of these z-scores. So for the passing yard z-score, we get a value of 0.3156, which is approximately 32%. And for the yards per attempt z-score, we get 0.7823, which is approximately 78%. And if you take this value and you take a look at the area of the distribution that's been colored in the pictures, they correspond. So, what do these values mean? Well, the first one means that Palmer passed for more yards than 32% of his peers. Just 32%. So he wasn't quite at the average. He was below the average, but he wasn't terrible. He wasn't, the lowest quarterback. But here he's being compared to other quarterbacks who played every single game in the season. And as we know, Palmer came in late this season and only played 10 out of the 16 games. So this may not be a fair comparison. So if we look at yards per attempt, because logically, if he only played a certain amount of games, his number of attempts was lower. So we should be able to average that all out. And here, he actually passed for more yards per attempt than 78% of his peers. He actually outperformed more than half of his peers and actually more than 3/4 of his peers. So this value actually tells us that he did a pretty good job. And it provides some evidence that, maybe Oakland should give him one more shot, which from what I understand, I think they did.